how much fun. Oh, hey guys. I'm just doing one of my favorite Christmas traditions, which is reading cards from friends that they send. Friends and family, it's always nice to catch up during this time of year, and that's something you could do as well. You can write letters, cards, and just do a summary of your year. It's kind of like a diary that you want to share. You can always look back on those, and it's kind of fun to see what you and your friends and family have done. So think about sending a letter to your friends and family this time of year. All right, but the real reason why you're here is we are now on chapters 9 and 10 of David Walliams' Ice Monster. Now remember, you do have to pay close attention because after you are going to be answering some questions. Now, we're going to remind again at the end of this, but you must use complete sentences when you answer these questions in order to get credit, right? So, because is not a full answer. Because he said so is not. You need to say who. Because Elsie did this, and then you can answer it. Okay? Plenty of ways to do it. That's just one example. All right, let's get started with chapters 9 and 10 of Ice Monster. The Devil's Work. Every morning, Elsie checked the newspapers for more news of the Ice Monster. Weeks passed until one day she heard the cloth-capped sellers shouting from the stands, "Ice Monster! To sell down the Thames! Ice Monster! Expected in London today! Ice Monster! To be kept frozen in ice in the museum!" The girl's heart pounded with excitement. Up in the Arctic, the mammoth and the huge slab of ice in which it had been found had been packed into a wooden crate full of snow and loaded on the whaling ship. It was then transported thousands of miles from the Arctic, all the way down the mouth of the Thames. From there it traveled upriver towards London, and its ultimate destination, the Natural History Museum. The whaling ship was escorted along the Thames by a formation of gleaming new boats of British naval fleet, which broke up the ice to allow its safe passage. The Ice Monster was being given a huge welcome, as if it were visiting king or queen. Thousands of Londoners lined the banks all along the river to catch a glimpse of the creature and to be part of this momentous occasion. Being little, Elsie was able to crawl under the grown-up's legs to scramble right to the front. There she could see the whaling ship and the huge coffin-like crate into which the animal was packed. When the ships had passed, Elsie raced across London towards the museum. Living in the streets, the girl knew every nook and cranny of the city. She dashed along back streets, across gardens, down tunnels, over rooftops, and even jumped on the back of a horse-drawn cabs to get there before the monster. A line of policemen with linked arms formed a wall round the museum as Londoners surged forward to see the wooden box trundle by a carriage pulled by 50 mighty horses. "Hooray!" cheered the crowds. But one lone voice was shouting something different. It was an old man with a long beard, wearing a big sandwich board over his shoulders. The words, "The end is nigh," were emblazoned across it. He held aloft a copy of the Bible and cried, "This is the devil's work! The prophecy has come true! The beast has come! The end is nigh!" Elsie tugged on his coat. "It's not a beast, sir. It's a woolly mammoth." The old man gave her a whack on the head with his Bible. "Thwack! Wicked child!" Elsie pushed past him, helping herself to the lump of moldy cheese from his pocket as she did so. The girl had just reached the gates of the museum when she was shoved back by policemen. "Get out of here, you revolting urchin!" he bawled, and he shunned her aside. "Ouch!" she cried as she tumbled onto her back. "We don't want your sort here. Now clear off!" As the lowest of the low, Elsie was used to being turned away, but being strong in spirit, she was not going to take no for an answer. So she scrambled her way back onto the gentleman's coat and trod on his top hat. Squish! Before he had a chance to cry out, she leaped off his top hat and onto the branch of a nearby tree. Boing! With her monkey feet, Elsie shimmied up the tree with ease and stood on the highest branch. From there, she watched as 100 men rolled the crate off the back of the carriage. With thick ropes, they heaved it up the stone steps. The huge wooden front doors of the museum had been taken off their hinges. The crowd fell silent as the men began pushing the crate through the doorway. Would it fit in without taking the front of the Natural History Museum with it? A cheer went up as the crate just squeezed through. Hurrah! Soon mutterings passed around the crowd that a very important visitor would be coming to the museum today to witness its unveiling. She's coming here? Who? You know. Oh, my Lord. Not her. Yes, her. She ain't been seen in ages. She's old now. This must really be something. I should have brought a new hat. Sure enough, barely an hour had passed before the streets echoed with the sounds of trumpets. Bra-da-da-da-da-da-da. All heads turned to see a golden carriage trundling along the road. Ahead of the carriage, livered soldiers on horseback blew trumpets to herald the arrival of the very important person seated in it, Queen Victoria. This was the day that would go down in history, so it was only fitting that the most powerful person in the world should be there. Queen Victoria was not just the Queen of Great Britain and Ireland, but the monarch of a vast empire that spanned the globe. She had even adopted the title of Empress of India. Despite the fact that she'd never actually been there, these were different days, as the crowd realized that they were in the presence of their queen, a woman who reigned over them for more than 60 years. They erupted in wild cheers, throwing their hats into the air. Hurrah! The golden carriage turned to the right to pass through the gates of the museum, and Elsie seized her chance. While the sky was black with hats, she leaped off the branch of the tree. Whoosh! She landed on top of the Queen's carriage. Thud! With all the noise and commotion, no one seemed to notice this huge breach of security. Elsie lay down flat on the roof of the carriage so she wouldn't be seen. In 1899, anyone getting this close to Her Majesty without an invitation might very well pay the price with their life. The carriage sped into the grounds of the museum and came to a halt at the bottom of the stone steps. Elsie lifted her head a tiny bit and peeked over the side of the carriage. Thousands of faces were pushed up against the metal railings, open mouths roaring their approval for their queen. Hurrah! The carriage wobbled slightly as Her Majesty stepped out. The queen was old and frail and tottered up the stone steps, helped by a handsome Indian attendant in a turban. She was dressed from head to toe in black and wore a solemn look on her face. That was because she was in deep mourning for her husband, Prince Albert, who though he had died nearly 40 years before, not wanting to disappoint the crowd, the queen slowly turned round and gave them a polite wave. Hurrah! While all eyes were on the royal guest, Elsie slid off the roof and lowered herself down the side of the carriage. There she hid behind the wheel. The hullabaloo must have startled the horses. Nay, nay! As the carriage shunted backwards a little, Elsie thought she was going to be trampled to death by the horses' hooves. But the carriage driver cracked his whip, snap, and ordered, "Woo!" Elsie let out a sigh of relief as the horses came to a juddering stop. The girl watched from her hiding place. As the queen was greeted with a bow from the director of the museum, the portly Sir Ray Lancaster, she led inside. The huge wooden doors were closed behind her. Thud! Then Elsie was feeling too clever. All around her she could see the legs of policemen. How was she going to get inside that museum without anyone seeing her? She was desperate to do so. But Elsie had more chance of becoming the next Archbishop of Canterbury. As she pondered her next move on her hands and knees, the most unexpected thing happened. The carriage moved off, leaving the girl hiding behind nothing at all. She was concealed only by some air. Air is the worst thing to find yourself hiding behind. Other bad ones include a conker, which is a booger, a marble, a rabbit dropping, a wasp, a pea, a flea, a speck of dust, an amoeba dropping, the invisible man. Elsie was in deep, deep doo-doo. All right, my friends, that does it for chapters 9 and 10 today. Remember, you are going to answer all of those questions with... Oh, I didn't hear enough of you. Let's try that again. Remember, you're going to shout it out when it's time. Ready? You're going to answer all those questions with... I heard enough of you that time. Complete sentences. Remember to click submit. And guys, remember, think of a letter that you could write to a friend or family member. Tell them about your year. It's been a different kind of year, of course. Maybe do it with your dog with you, or your cat, or your lizard, or whatever type of pet you have. It's always nice to have a nice, warm pet to snuggle with you while you write those stories. Have a great rest of your day, guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Now to get back to my cards. Snow, cold, seasonal, regular.